Okay, welcome to a special edition of Monday Night Chat with Wong Chen. This is it. This is the one. We're shooting live from, well, we're not shooting live, are we? Today, unfortunately, we can't shoot live. We have to be in Parliament for a very important vote on the budget. So that's why I can't leave, and my staff will be there at the service centre tonight, but I won't be there. The vote is likely to happen around 8:30 to 9:30, possibly 10 o'clock tonight. So we're doing this special episode of a pre-recorded version of Monday Night Chat with Wong Chen, that's me. Brought to you by the Member of Parliament, that's me, in collaboration with Invoke, right? And now, before we start, of course we have the intro music, and I understand today that's going to be recorded separately. The music will be done either by Nadira, or it is Nadira today, is it? Yep, Nadira on the violin. Okay. Okay, now that supposedly is the music segment from Nadira. I'm sure it's really good. Well, that's the problem with recording non-live. It's really quite awkward. So we move into now, previously in Kelana Jaya. Now, as you all know, I'm in the middle of parliamentary sitting, and it is very tough, and it gets going for long hours. I'm here in Parliament by 8:30 in the morning after I send my kids to kindergarten, and then I'm here until late into the night. The session is until 11:30. Sometimes I can get an opportunity to go back home for makan, hang out with my kids for a while, then come back again. Today, we're going to stay on until it's over, which means until the vote is done. Tomorrow, we will start what we call committee stage debate. Now, enough of that. Let's talk about previously in Kelana Jaya, which is what we have to discuss today. Well, not much news about Kelana Jaya itself, other than the water crisis issue has more or less resolved itself. Thank God for that. I attended a few functions this weekend, but primarily I want to talk about two things. One is an issue regarding in Parliament, regarding YTL and the Bestari Net project. And then the second issue is to talk about East Coast Train, where I joined YB Rafizi, Ong Kian Meng, and also Dr. Hatta to issue a press statement regarding the East Coast Train, and there was one done today as well. Now let's start with the YTL Bestari Net. As you know, we're in the middle of the session of parliamentary briefing on the budget. So one of the issues that came out during the early start of the week was a PAC report that was put on our table. Now the PAC report is prepared by the Public Accounts Committee. It's placed on the parliamentarians' table. So I was early in 8:30. I opened it. I looked at it. The One Bestari Net is basically the government's project to introduce electronic education, right? Through giving laptops and also giving feeding through electronic content to people. But essentially it's run by the main contractor YTL, the big giant YTL. And the Bestari Net project, the physical aspect of it is to put a unipole, which is basically a transmission pole, onto a site in the school itself. We've received a lot of complaints about that from people in Subang Jaya. Why is it so close to the road? Is it safe for children, so on and so forth? But this PAC report raises the issue regarding this unipole being put up and how much that was supposed to be paid from YTL to the school, or basically to the Ministry of Finance, for usage of the space to put up this pole. Now, the report talks about many other issues about bad performance, late delivery of projects, low usage of the electronic content. But the one that I picked up on was regarding the rental for the space to put up this pole. Yeah. Under the PAC report, they interviewed the Jabatan Tanah and Galian, who did a review and said that YTL should be paying them 1,200 ringgit a month. But the Ministry of Education intervened on behalf of YTL and got the Jabatan Tanah Galian to reduce it down to, how much do you think it reduced down to, Tanya? 600. Drum roll. 600. No, it was reduced down to 1,000 ringgit a year. Okay. So that's a massive reduction. Yeah, so we did the maths very simply. If they have to pay for 2,000 plus sites, which is what YTL got to put up this UniPost, 2,000 areas, 2,000 schools plus in Malaysia, they have to pay originally, if they agreed on the 1,200 per month, somewhere close to 30 million a year. Instead, they have to pay now only 2 million a year to the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Education to put up this post. So this, wow, congratulations to YTL for striking such a wonderful deal. You guys are probably cleverer and you got a good deal. But the issue is not that. The issue is about competition. Why is YTL, using their 4G system under YES, is allowed to pay such low rates and compete with other companies, whether it's, what are those companies called? Are those U-Mobile, right? And all the smaller telco players, which is what they're fighting over. All telco players have to go and pay almost 2,500 a month for one single site to put up. But YTL gets to pay 1,000 ringgit a year. So congratulations to YTL, but the PAC is looking into you, and I, as the Member of Parliament, is merely stating what the PAC has stated. So I brought up the matter to Parliament, right? Now, let's go to the second issue, which is the East Coast Train Project. The big 55 billion behemoth project that the Prime Minister has gone to China and sort of struck a deal, right? We are all shocked by it. So what happened was in Parliament early on when we heard about this news, Rafizi, myself, Kian Ming, and Dr. Hatta sat together and decided that we should form a small committee to try and look at the China deal. But prior to that, in this room, you want to pan around the room a bit, perhaps? This is where we're shooting this. Is basically the PKR parliamentary meeting room. It's not very big, I can assure you. Okay. So in this room, we actually had a China briefing from my wife. My wife is an economist. She came and gave a briefing to about 25 members of parliament from Pakatan Harapan, and we talked about China. That will be late. I'll discuss it further later on the public policy space in the second part of this show. So basically, we looked at these numbers and we said, wow, this is humongous, 55 billion. And if you all recall, about 3 months ago, Sarawak Report, Claire Brown, right, issued one of these postings where they said that the East Coast train deal was somehow, she alleges anyway, with some documents that she produced, she alleged that that this is all related to some sort of repayment for IPIC, where about 3.5 billion US dollars will be diverted to pay IPIC from this deal. We don't know whether that's true, but that's the allegation by Sarawak Report. But what happened next is this. Over the weekend, on Saturday, you wake up in the morning, you get your Edge weekly newspaper, and it tells you this story that this is possibly the costliest railroad ever in the world. Yeah, so another Malaysia Boleh project, and they estimate that the actual cost should be about 30 billion to 32 billion, so not 50 billion or 55 billion, which is what the government has said. And today, in Parliament, the committee has issued a statement revealing the fact that the government was in such a rush to sign this project that they actually bought a company called Malaysia Rail Link Sdn Bhd. And guess what the paid up capital was? 2 million, not 2 million, sorry, 2 ringgit only. I think just enough to buy you 1.5 nasi lemak, or even 1 nasi lemak to this rate. So a nasi lemak company called Malaysia Rail Link, supposedly owned by the Malaysian government, went to sign a 46 billion deal with CCCC, yeah, which is China Communication, something else, was a construction company, yeah. So imagine how rushed Najib was, forming a little company in late September, taking it ready, a $2 company paid up, went to China and asked and signed a deal with China for 46 billion project. So the question going around the entire Malaysia today at this very moment is, where's the balance 9 billion going to? So nobody knows. Okay, So that's it for the previously in Kelana Jaya. So we go into an intermission now and more music from Nadira. Okay, we're back. Now we go into Policy Monday. Now, Policy Monday is when we start discussing policy issues. As promised last week, I will raise the issue regarding foreign policy, in particular China and Malaysia. Everything seems to be like falling into place because this is the single biggest hottest topic in Malaysia at the moment. In the coffee shop, in the in Parliament and stuff like that. What is really happening in Malaysia-China relationship? Now, I don't really have a lot of answers on this subject matter. Let's be fair. Let's be absolutely frank about this matter. I'm an economic guy, so I look at economic numbers, but I do know a bit about foreign policy as well. Now, someone's trying to call me. I'm going to reject this. Hang on. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Well, that's the thing about recorded messages. We can actually edit this, but I don't think you should edit it. Let's just run with it. Let's just get down to the issue about foreign policy. As you know, Malaysia has a history of foreign policy where we are neutral. And during Dr. Mahathir's time, we used to be the third world leader, the South people. Yeah? But we always look towards the East because Dr. Mahathir has this hang up with colonial masters. He doesn't really like the Brits. He doesn't like the Americans, so on and so forth. So the Malaysian foreign policy has always been decidedly neutral or South-based, right? Where we are with the poorer third world country. Now, what has happened is this. About a few years ago, the engagement of Obama and Najib started. The bromance of Obama and Najib started, and Malaysia started leaning towards America. Now with the DOJ report, fast forward a few years, all sort of funny things. Now it appears that the bromance is as good as dead. And as you know, Obama is going to be president for another 2 months or so, 2 or 3 months. So it looks like there's a new pivot to China by Najib. So what is the basic fundamental issues here? One is economics, and one is to do with geopolitical. Now, I want to be very fair to China, and I want to be very fair to the Najib administration. What I'm going to try to do is explain to you a lot of questions that we have to consider. I don't have the answers on these issues, yeah, but I'd like to raise a lot of questions and to at least try to empathize what is really going on at the geopolitical level. Number one, economics. China is Malaysia's #1 trading partner, and this is set to grow over time as China become more and more influential and more powerful in Asia and also globally, right? So we also sell a lot of palm oil to them. We are also take a lot of their services in Malaysia. For instance, China is actually very big in the telco industry here, supplying services, technology, solutions, and stuff like that. China is big in property. They're all the way down in Johor, in Iskandar area. They're the big player, right? China is also now going into high-speed train or train rail projects. They have the Penang port, not Penang port, sorry. They have the Kuantan port. That is a China-owned project that they bought into. They also are developing Malacca. So you can imagine that this relationship between Malaysia and China has a very strong foundation in terms of economic and trade issues. Now, regarding geopolitics, China's conflict with ASEAN, the entire ASEAN including Malaysia, is really in the shoals and also the Spratly Island dispute. Now, how do we view the Chinese position in these islands? The activities they're doing. They're building what is clearly a military base there. They've got a landing strip, yeah, for planes. They've got what looks like defensive structure. So all this is happening. Everybody can see it. You can Google online to see the structures itself. So the question then is, what are ASEAN countries doing? They're also occupying a few of the islands. Let's be clear about this. All this is not an attack on anybody, but Vietnam, I think, has occupied 22 islands, Philippines maybe 10, 15, Malaysia's got 5, you know. So it's not just China doing it, everybody else doing it also lah. Let's be very clear about that. Yeah. So the question then is China doing this for defensive purposes, or are they taking an aggressive offensive purpose? Yeah. And that is the issue that most of us who are lawmakers will have to grapple with if you're interested in foreign policy. Are these moves to build military-like bases in those disputed islands, are those moves defensive or aggressive? You can't say. You can't really know, right? I mean, unless you're in the Chinese Politburo or in the Chinese Navy or military, you really don't know. But we can get some guidance on the issue by looking at historical positions of China. Other than, you know, during the time when the Mongolians ruled China, Kublai Khan and Genghis Khan, the Chinese have never actually have a colonial-minded attitude to conquer countries. They took Korea, they tried to conquer Japan, they failed. But when they take Korea, they sort of have an agreement with Korea. The Korean had their own king, they just paid tribute. The king of Siam paid tribute, we paid tribute to the king of Siam. Malacca depended heavily on Chinese trade and also Chinese protection. You got, you know, Cheng Ho, you got Hang Lipo story, so and so forth. So what we believe is Chinese foreign policy has never been that aggressive. They have been always seeking recognition, and they've been seeking prestige or some sort of tribute paid to them to recognize them as the Middle Kingdom. So unlike the Western powers that went around to colonize the world, I don't think the Chinese have an aggressive history. Having said that, that doesn't mean that China will never pursue aggressive history. Yeah? What we know is historically the Chinese do not have an aggressive position. Therefore, for the time being, unless evidence tells us otherwise, I suppose, I don't speak for PKR on this matter. My personal view is I think they are mostly doing it for defensive purposes. But we have to continue to monitor them so that these defensive structures do not become an offensive structure in the future. So when you talk about defense, why the Chinese do it, it's quite simple. Up north in China, up north of China, on par with China, is Japan, where they have the Okinawa base. And then down south, they got the Singaporean US naval base, or Singapore working closely with US on those issues, right? And then they got Taiwan on its eastern borders, right? You used to have Philippines as a close ally of America, now sort of not very sure, but not likely to lean towards America anymore. Philippines leaning more towards China. You have Vietnam, which is a historical, traditional enemy of China. So, you know, they're sort of surrounded by American naval bases. Let's put it that way. So they need to put a naval base in the Spratleys to sort of offset the American influence in the South China Sea. So I think it is legitimate to say for this moment, for the next decade or so, we think that these activities in the Spratly Islands is mostly for defensive purposes and to offset the balance of power between China and US. Now, let's go on to what is the latest implication of this 144 billion MOU signed between China and Malaysia. Now, the Chinese, if the Sarawak report is correct, then obviously the Chinese is helping Najib the next step on how to bail out 1MDB again. As you know, end of last year and early this year, China bought out Edra Energy and bought Bandar Malaysia. So it appears now that this deal, they will somehow solve the issue of the IPIC debt on behalf of 1MDB. Again, allegations were not sure exactly until the Prime Minister states so, or until somebody whistleblows with some real concrete evidence. So far, what we've seen from Sarawak report is Sarawak report. Yeah, and we do. I mean, to be fair to Claire, I think she's done a good job, and she has just been proven to be right all along. Okay, now what are the implications? 1MDB will possibly benefit from this, but the other thing is we may see some Chinese voters in Malaysia, Malaysian Chinese, may give some votes back to the government. It may happen. I mean, we discuss these kind of things, the political implications. Another thing that we might see is actual investments in Malaysia, which is good for the economy because everything is looking a bit stagnant now. As for the other implications we have to look into, well, for start, we have to look into, is Malaysia going to be like Laos and Cambodia, becoming increasingly pro-China, so that any South China Sea dispute, Malaysia will be voting against the interests of other countries, Singapore, Vietnam. So we don't know how far this implication will go. Now, as for the investment itself, will these Chinese investments, multi-billion MOUs being signed, will they actually bring economic growth to the country? We think not. Well, we think there are obviously some growth, but generally most Malaysians will not benefit, not even 50% from these investments. I think Malaysia will benefit close to about 20%. 80% of whatever they're going to invest, Chinese are going to bring their own materials. They will bring their own engineers, they'll bring their own metal bits, their own technology. The Chinese are essentially EPC contractors, They just kind of come in and do everything on their own. So the little bit that will trickle down to Malaysia is about 20%, which means that our people, businessmen, will probably benefit from food and beverage, hotels, entertainment, those kind of industries that China can't package from China itself. They will enjoy a boom. We'll definitely sell more cement. We will sell more laterite, or what you call premix. Other than that, I don't see a lot of upside for Malaysia overall when the Chinese come and invest. The other thing, of course, is if they do come and invest and bring in lots of money, the ringgit should strengthen. So that's good news and bad news. If the ringgit strengthens too much, Malaysian exports become less competitive. If the ringgit strengthens, we find it easier to go overseas for a holiday. Let's put it that way. So it's good also for Malaysia's morale. But at the same time, you've got the pros and cons of strengthening of the ringgit from Chinese investment coming in. Yeah. So lots of issues to consider. But parliamentarians, what we have to do is we got to scrutinize every single one of the deals. As I stated earlier regarding the East Coast Train project, the 55 billion, a lot of questions to be asked. We need to see whether these investments are truly investments or are they loans to government. Now, on the East Coast Train, we know they are loans. There are soft loans provided by the Chinese government to Malaysian government. So the issue then becomes, what are the terms of these loans? What we know is roughly 7 years interest free, and then from 7 years onwards, we're going to start repaying, right? But if the cost of the project is way too high, higher than the norm, then essentially we won't be able to pay it. I mean, the project cannot generate, in our simple computation, 55 billion to repay back. That is just impossible. For 30 billion, I think that's going to be difficult as well. So if we can't pay it, then how does the Malaysian government, who has to guarantee this project, how will they repay China? What we know is this. We have looked at Venezuela in particular. We have looked at Africa. In countries where they receive a lot of Chinese money and they cannot repay back the loans from China for infrastructure development, the Chinese demand land to be paid as compensation, or in oil-rich country, physical oil to be delivered to China. Okay, so let's throw a scenario up, and this is not very accurate, but it will give you an idea. Say we borrow 55 billion to build this East Coast Train, and we, lots of trade goes on. We move lots of goods from Kuantan to Port Klang. We move goods from Kelantan down to Kuantan. So just imagine that we have a lot of multiplier effect. But as in most infrastructure projects, the repayment back of these terms is going to take a long time to, repayment takes a long gestation period. Assuming we generate 20 million of taxes for the Malaysian government, 20 billion of taxes for the Malaysian government, right? So Malaysian government take this 20 billion, repay back to China. That will mean that 55 billion minus 20, you got still 35 billion left to repay back. How do you repay back 35 billion? You probably have to deliver 10 billion of oil, worth of oil to China. So that's that's going to crimp Petronas earnings. Or you give palm oil or something like that, right? Or you give land. And if you have to give land of worth, say, 20 billion of land, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of land. What will happen is the federal government doesn't have land. The federal government will start to acquire land from the state government. So that will create another federal crisis. What I'm saying is this. I mean, there's lots of permutation. We can go left, go right. We can come up with what ifs, right? Or we can't see the future. But what I'm telling you is this. If the deal is fundamentally wrongly priced, there's going to be a lot of problems. Whether it's going to be create problems between Petronas and federal government, whether it's going to create problems between federal government and state governments regarding land, one way or another, hutang wajib dibayar. You have to pay back the hutang. Yeah. So please, allow the parliamentarians more time. We will get down to the issue. We're not anti. Remember this. We're not anti-China. Nor are we anti-investments. What we are anti is bad investments or mucked up investments. We need to go back down and clarify every single point and look at the permutations, what can happen, what cannot happen. But from learning from Venezuela and Africa, there is a price to pay when you take a lot of debt from China, and it's not sustainable. Okay, so I think that's it for Policy Monday. We'll go into another short break. Nadira is going to play another violin music. Okay. Okay, last part of the segment, the Q&A. It appears that Tanya told me that I've spoken a way bit too long. So we're going to do some short Q&A, a shorter Q&A, so that this program doesn't go beyond like 40 minutes. Okay. What questions do we have today?
Okay, first question. Let's say Premier Lee were watching this video. What kind of message would you want to send to China?
Premier Lee? Premier Xi Jinping.
Lee Keqiang?
Li Keqiang, well, the boss is Xi Jinping lah.
Okay, let's say she's watching this.
Okay, what message do I want to send to China? That's an interesting question. Well, I hope that the Chinese government, when they make an investment or an infrastructure project to Malaysia, that they engage everybody, all the stakeholders. That's the best way to do it, right? And that they should understand that if these are loans to the Malaysian government that has to be borne by the Malaysian people, that these loans should be as transparent as possible, and that everything is accounted for. I don't think it would be a good idea for China to overlend, if there's such a word as that, to give us too much money, and that whatever they lend us should be feasible financially. That's very important. It's not so much because we're objecting to it. It's more because as a lender, China ultimately hopes that they get their money back, right? So if the project is not viable, don't lend us too much, because you won't get your money back. If you can't get your money back, that's going to upset China-Malaysian relationship. Yeah, the opposition are not against investment, but we need to have an accountable relationship. And I think, China as such a great nation with 5,000 years of history and tradition, and philosophy, and Confucius teachings. The principle is this: if you want to have a good relationship, a good working relationship in Malaysia, it is always better to have a fair relationship now, to establish a clean, fair, equal partnership. If you want to do business, I mean, this is just a simple, because I'm a corporate lawyer, I used to be a corporate lawyer. I'll give you a simple business analogy. Say I am a company, and I want to open a branch in Bangkok, right? So I go find a Bangkok partner, a Thai partner. I won't go and find a Thai partner that is known around the world to be corrupt. I won't go and do a deal with a partner that is known to be blacklisted, right? And I won't mark up the investment to please that partner. In the long term, I would like a partner who is equally capable as myself. And that should be the Chinese approach towards Malaysia. To understand that if you do a deal that at the foundation or at the start is wrong, it's not going to help China in the medium or long term. Okay? So that's my message to China. Please come and invest, but be transparent about it, and also to choose your partner wisely. Okay?
Okay, next question. Let's move from China to the United States.
Wow.
So something exciting is happening tomorrow. Would you like to give your thoughts on the exciting event?
Well, you know, I'm one of those very disappointed Democrats, Bernie Sanders supporter. You know, I don't like Clinton. That's just the state it is. I think. Well, I don't want to make a bit. Well, I suppose I have to make a prediction who's going to win, right? I don't know. I think the world is getting anti-establishment overall, and we have seen this in since last year, when small parties make impact in Greece, in Sri Lanka, places like that, and then you start to think, you know, there is this general mood that everybody distrusts establishment. So unfortunately for Clinton, she's facing that tide, and when Brexit came along, it just showed you that the polling companies may be wrong fundamentally somewhere. So you know, I'm an avid reader of the New York Times and also the Guardian. You know, I read more of that actually every day than the local papers, and I've seen a trend that is emerging. I don't know whether the media is doing it on purpose, but essentially they are cheerleading some sort of results, which unfortunately I don't feel it. From just looking at CNN, looking at speeches and stuff, looking at some of these reports coming in, I have a feeling that there's a 50-50 chance now for Trump to become president. And with the anti-establishment wave that the entire world is experiencing, I think his chance is even better than 50%. Now, if Trump wins, I don't know. I mean, we're entering into this really dark, uncharted territory. But at least on the TPPA front, Malaysia will not be in the TPPA. Malaysia may conclude separate FTAs, right? The multilateral system will probably be as good as dead. And if Trump wins as well, I think foreign policy-wise, he looks like an isolationist. He might go back to repair America or make America. Was it make America great again? Is it?
Yeah.
Make America great again. So foreign policy-wise, you may, for some strange reason, find that the Middle East might just become more peaceful. We don't know. We can only hope. If Clinton wins, I think she will renege on her election promise on TPPA. She will definitely get it done. She might amend one or two things, but she'll come back with TPPA, and we will probably have to deal with the TPPA. There are always pros and cons, but what we're saying is the TPPA overall is negative to Malaysia. That's my view. It's good for labour standards. It's bad for competitiveness. It's bad for intellectual property and stuff like that, and ISDS. Yeah. One other implication is there for a Clinton government. Well, I think the foreign policy, which she is now the state secretary, so she runs the foreign office, will continue, and it is a mess, right? I mean, so the Syrian conflict will probably continue. North Korea, saber rattling with China will continue. So I don't see a lot of wonderful outcomes foreign policy wise, but at least she's sane. She's predictable in that way. You know, so I don't know. I really don't know. I've reached the point where I can't be bothered who wins. We just have to react to the victory of one or two of these candidates, and hope for the very best. So good luck, America. Vote carefully. You know, and the rest of us will hold our breath. We don't know if Trump wins, whether the stock market will crash. There are indications that it might do so. So if I were you tomorrow, take a chill approach, I suppose. I really can't advise anything. I'm just going to go to Parliament, debate my stuff, and I think the results will come up probably Wednesday, right? Yeah, because we're ahead of US 12, 16 hours, right? So basically the results come up Wednesday. Okay, any more questions? No? Okay, thank you so much. Well, this is it's not live. We'll go back to live and back to my office hopefully next week on Monday. Thank you so much.